The wines from Bordeaux are a little bit different than, say, our domestic counterparts. In France, you cannot change the characteristic or what they call the terroir of the vineyard sites through any means other than what Mother Nature gives you. That means no irrigation. So what the vignerons will do is they will go to high density plantings in their vineyards. I'm talking about for how many
6,500 to 7,000 plants.
They Darmillac has 8,000 plants per acre. That's gigantic. That means that you're spacing on a 1 foot by 1 foot row. Your densing is forcing the vines, so your vines are not like they are in California, where you have the cordon spacing. You have a 6 foot row in between rows, and you can fit a tractor down the center. It's not the same thing in Bordeaux. Bordeaux, you have a 1 to 2 foot row, and then you have 1 foot by 1 foot spacings between plants. What that does in an environment that takes no water other than what Mother Nature gives you, it forces those vines, instead of spreading out on surface roots, it forces those vines to go straight down into the ground, sometimes up to 20 to 30 feet, even longer than that, in search of water, in search of a water table. Now, Bordeaux is unique. Bordeaux, this area of Bordeaux, has been established since Roman times. It was a big, gigantic Roman outpost. A lot of the area, say you're retiring as a Roman officer, some of your retirement plan is land. You ask for it in places like southern France, Spain. Bordeaux was a very, very popular place to have land grants and things like that. So they have made wine there since roughly around 46 BC or 50 BC. But it's not like it was back then. Bordeaux today is not like it was. See, Bordeaux is based off an estuary system. It's based off of 3 basic rivers. You have the Dordogne and the Garonne. The Garonne is where the city of Bordeaux sits upon. The Dordogne and the Garonne meet and form the Gironde, the bigger river. This is a delta area. Much of the area of the Médoc, where we're drinking now, the area of Pauillac, the area of Saint Julien, the area of Saint Estèphe, and of Margaux, were largely underwater until the 15th and 16th centuries. So when I talk about the Romans settling the area, they were south of the city of Bordeaux in the area of Graves and Pessac-Léognan, and they were settling in the other areas of Saint-Emilion. Anybody here ever been to Bordeaux? Saint-Emilion is a big Roman outpost. It sits upon a hill, and it's a fortified Roman city where the Romans staged their invasions into the rest of Europe, into Spain. It was sort of a way station. So also into Great Britain. So this area was very popular with the Romans. Now, but most of what we're going to be drinking was underwater until the 15th century. So how did Bordeaux get its rise to fame? Bordeaux is probably the most popular wine on the planet. A lot of people are confused and say, well, California is so popular now. You know, you're starting to see California wines overseas and stuff. People forget we don't make a lot of wine in California. These Château and Bordeaux. How many acres does Darmillac have?
Hectares, there's 65 hectares, so
roughly
140 acres.
Yeah, 140 acres under vine. They make about 18,000 cases of wine in a good year. that our producers make a minuscule amount of that per year. So, and D'Armagnac is actually a moderate sized chateau. So, big landowners, but they're a moderate producer in the scheme of things. So, that area got drained in the 15th and 16th century after the English lost the area. I should go into a little bit of the history first before I cover the draining of the swamps. But this area rose to its fame during the time of the British kings, the English kings. There was a lady, Eleanor of Aquitaine, that married a French king, Henry VII. Now, Henry VII and Eleanor came from a party place. She ran the courts of nobles in the south of France. She was the most wealthiest woman and the largest landowner in the entire south of France. She married Henry VII. He was more interested in life as a monk. So his courts of nobles, they didn't party a lot. There was a lot of friction between he and she. He basically got the wealth of her land, but she got very little in return. She didn't really like their courts of nobles. After she did not give him sons, he divorced her. And she married Henry Plantagenet II. That's the king, future king of England. He was known as the Duke of Normandy at the time. She married Henry Plantagenet, and the French wines of this region became extremely important to the importation of wines in Great Britain. Great Britain doesn't make a lot of wine even today. They import the vast majority of Bordeaux at that time into Great Britain.
And even at that time, Bordeaux itself was an English outpost.
And it was an English outpost. So when Henry married Eleanor of Aquitaine, she owned the entire region from the area of Bordeaux, like 100 miles inland from Bordeaux, all the way to the Pyrenees mountain range on the border of Spain. So she was a very wealthy landowner. And when Henry married her, he assumed the control of all of that land. So it fell under English rule. Now, in 1853, the French had had enough of the English, and actually in the Battle of Castillon, which is right on the other side of the river of Pauillac, they forced the English into the sea for the last time and assumed control of that region. But England still didn't make any wine. They were still huge consumers of wine at that period of time, and the wine trade continued throughout that time. Now, come the 15th, 16th, and 17th centuries, the French drew up treaties with the Dutch. Dutch had the largest navy in the world at that time. Their merchants were extremely interested in the wine trade. And they started importing vast amounts of Bordeaux. But what happened was the Dutch came in and they set up all of these negociants, all of these wine merchants. They bought chateaus in the region, and they drained the remainder of the Médoc. They are very, very good engineers at this time. They know how to drain a swamp. Boom. The entire region of Saint-Julien, the entire region of Pauillac, the entire region of Saint-Estèphe is exposed, and you have these big gravel bars from the delta that are set up. There's tons of gravel, there's tons of limestone, and for some reason, the clay in this area has a lot of iron content in the soils. You see a lot of the iron band that sits at the very north of Saint-Julien and the south of Pauillac, wineries like Château Léville-Lascasse and Château Latour. They sit upon these iron-rich soils, and they make monster, strong, beefy style of Bordeaux. They are super long lived. You're talking about 30 to 80-year-old wines that have the capacity of aging that long. But the iron bands still go north all the way up towards about Saint Estephe, and you still have iron-rich soils, and iron in the soils creates a lot of tannin, a lot of muscle in the wines. That's why a lot of times in blind tastings, you can tell the difference between a wine from Pauillac, because they have a certain characteristic, and the wines from Saint Julien. You can tell the difference between Saint-Emilion that have high clay in the soil. It's blue clay that retains water. That's why they'll use higher proportions of Merlot. Cabernet does not perform well on clay. Merlot does. Merlot loves clay, the water retention in clay. So Saint Estephe, higher proportions of Merlot, but Pauillac is Cabernet Central. That's where Cabernet does. It thrives in those iron-rich, sandy soils. The soil types of this area are very, very poor though. Even though it's a delta, and even though this was swampland, if you go to Bordeaux, you'll see the soil types. It is very dirty looking sandy soil with a lot of scree, a lot of limestone pebbles throughout the soil. I was standing with the winemaker of Pichon Lalande on his balcony overlooking his vineyards, and he was like, "Look out here, Keith." He's like, "If it weren't for grapevines, we couldn't grow corn here. You can't plant anything else in this soil. The only reason that grapevines do so well is grapevines are a pest. They will grow in a split rock. They will grow in any kind of soil that you put them in. But that poor soil actually forces those roots down. It helps sort of force those roots down and get into the water table of the Gironde River. So it's what makes this area special. So no irrigation on these vines. You get what Mother Nature gives you. I think it was in 1997, a producer called Valandro, and Valandro goes for about $400 a bottle. I ran the Bordeaux Marathon in 1997, and when I was leaving on September 5th, you could see off in the distance the storm clouds, and I'm talking about hurricane-looking kind of clouds that were rolling in. And it was a deluge that actually sort of put a damper on the entire vintage. They had a perfect vintage leading up to these storms. Well, the owner of Valandrode said, I've had enough with this, the laws of France. I'm going to roll out plastic in my vineyards, and I'm going to let the water roll off onto the lower slope of the vineyard and keep it off my vines. Well, his neighbors turned him in and said, "Hey, this guy's changing. He's altering the characteristics of the soil. He's altering the characteristics of the climate that he's in, and that's a no-no." And the French government intervened and said, "Hey, you have to declassify all of your wine. You cannot put the name Valandrode on your wine now." So a bottle of $400 wine is now being sold at $28. It was just ordinary Bordeaux. What's that?
You couldn't even call it Bordeaux.
It automatically gets declassified into the equivalent of table wine. So it is a big no. You cannot alter the characteristic of what Mother Nature gives you, but that also protects every ounce of character that's unique to each and every single chateau. So that's what's great about Bordeaux. But in poor vintages, it can be a real struggle. But luckily with global warming, not a lot of variation in vintages.